Welcome back to the Saltworks podcast. I'm your host, Hallie Dye. We have a great show. Today on the podcast, we have Elizabeth Coker. Elizabeth shares just about growing up in her environment and how she felt this need to control and how God really uprooted that control. I know that's something we can all deeply relate with, and just how he really instilled his eyes and heart for people, especially children, in her story, and also how he brought it full circle and began to use those things she once viewed as weakness for his good and his kingdom. I can't wait to share her story with you. She's someone that just keeps it real and just really highlights the goodness and faithfulness of God in all the details of her life. But before we jump into the conversation, I want to share a couple of partners with you today. It is spring, almost summer. We are in full swing of running the roads with all the trips and practices and end of the year events. And so without as much time to cook or get snacks from home, Daily Press is here to help. Daily Press has fast and friendly service for your busy schedule with their made to order deli options for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And for your busiest, craziest days, their fresh grab and go options in the open air cooler and hot to go box. What you might not know is they even have a wide variety of frozen take home meals and appetizers. And we can't forget all the baked good options and fresh brewed coffee. Daily Press has 4 locations, making it convenient for you and your family, and are open from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. at all but one location. Plus, it's a family-owned business, so stop by Daily Press today. When you're making medical decisions, it can feel exhausting and confusing at best. If you don't know about Northeast Imaging, you need to know. If your family needs an MRI, CT, X-ray, or ultrasound, Northeast Imaging is where you want to go. They are a patient-friendly diagnostic testing facility that is doctor-trusted and patient-preferred. They have a friendly staff who is committed to focus on high-quality scans and intentional care to the patient, plus their referring providers. And listen, it doesn't matter if you're using your health insurance or paying cash, Northeast Imaging is almost always more affordable than local hospitals. The facility is conveniently located at 1703 Lammy Lane in Monroe. They're open Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. So tell your healthcare provider you want to go to Northeast Imaging. And now to my conversation with Elizabeth. Well, Elizabeth, welcome to the Saltworks podcast.
It's my honor.
Well, we almost didn't make it here today.
Yeah.
Well, you did. I almost didn't. I was actually on the workout mat at the Mac, and Lindsay called me, and I almost screened you. And then I was like, she doesn't usually call me right now. And she was like, hey, are you coming? I was like, yes. And I'm so glad you were so gracious to let us push it back, because I just can't wait to share your story. So thank you.
Yeah.
And you were gracious because you were like, it's fine, which it's not, because
there was a PJ's coffee
like
right up there. I saw it and I was like, oh, let's go there. So yeah.
Oh, well. Glad I could help PJs this morning, but thank you. Well, who is Elizabeth Coker?
That is
a loaded question.
It is a loaded question. I could be super spiritual right now and go that direction. I really think I'm a work in progress. I every day leaning in on. I'm just really dependent on the Lord these days. As I became a mom and a wife, that became more and more evident that I'm very dependent on Him to take care of my kids, because I can't be everything for them, and so I think just Elizabeth is a work in progress.
I like that.
So yeah,
I like that. That's a beautiful answer. Tell us about growing up. Did you grow up in Monroe?
I grew up in Franklin Parish,
okay.
And then we moved here when I was in the 4th, 5th grade.
I gotcha.
And out towards West Washita, that area.
And did you grow up in a Christian home?
I did. My parents made it really easy to say yes to Jesus. Mm-hmm. We attended First Baptist Wisner, and was there when the doors were open, VBS. Grandparents were Christians. It was a good childhood. Mm-hmm. I will say, I think more or less I want to honor everybody that
Yeah.
as I talk about childhood and people in my life. I will say I think God was less in my home but more in my church. I will say that. Like I think I learned a lot more about the Lord at church than I did at my house. I think I felt more equipped as I aged and got involved in a youth group and things like that. So it was a good childhood. I was very safe. They brought me to church. They had me around people that loved the Lord.
Yeah.
So yeah, my mom and dad were Christians.
Yeah.
Are Christians. Yeah.
You mentioned in your notes that your grandmother, who went to your church, right?
Yeah.
And was a believer, she was at 5th grade that she was diagnosed with cancer.
She fought cancer for about 13 years,
Wow.
but when I was in the 5th grade, we were here. So we had
Okay.
moved to Ouachita Parish. My mom and dad were teachers and transitioned from Franklin Parish to Ouachita Parish and brought us over here. She got really sick with leukemia. I think it was stage 4. And she went to MD Anderson and didn't come out of MD Anderson. And for me, I missed a lot of school, and I didn't quite understand what was happening. But that was my first encounter with sickness and death.
Yeah.
And it was really hard because it rocked my whole family. Extended family, my aunts, my uncles, my mom. It was just a little chaotic for a while.
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone really could. We all knew where she was. We knew that she loved the Lord, and we would see her again one day. But there was just a deep grief that just overshadowed our family, and everybody was trying to figure out how to deal with that grief in different ways.
Sure.
And for me, I went into control mode. Like if my mom brought up my grandmother's death, because I was old enough to remember everything. All that happened, and then all that happened after. And but when my mom would bring it up or talk about my grandmother, I went into control mode. Like, change the subject. I don't want to deal with this. Keep it light. And so I started that fairly young, just not wanting to deal with the choking back tear. Like, I don't want to deal with what I'm trying to, with what's going on inside of me.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Do you feel like that, like some anxiousness kind of entered the picture for you in that season?
Yeah. I was an anxious child and like young. I think I know now I struggle with anxiety, and I can tell that, but back then I did not know. Like even going into middle school and high school and college, I wanted control over situations, over relationships, over different things, and even manipulative in a lot of ways. Like, if I can control this in a certain way, this is how it's going to make me feel. I can make sure I'm okay.
I also love hearing this part of your story, because I think sometimes, this is going to sound weird, but manipulation can look like such a negative thing. And it's not like, we're not saying it is good or it's okay. But I also love that you're highlighting, like, I was an anxious kid who felt the loss, and so, like, this was my form of protection.
It was.
And I think sometimes we don't really, stop to say, well, where's this coming from? You know, and, everyone's trying to protect their world and keep it smooth. Yeah. And, when you feel like you've lost control there, you know, I can definitely see where that would feel safe to you.
Yeah, it really did. It was it was chaos. And that went on for a couple of years in our family of watching just extended family and my family just not know how to deal with death and the loss of their mother and grandmother.
Yeah.
And for me, I didn't know how to cope. I didn't know how to walk through that properly, and I dealt with it how I needed to deal with it. Like I just became strength, control. And,
for the person listening, Elizabeth, that's like, this has happened in my family, and I have a child that I think they might feel this way. you looking back and now as a mom, how would you encourage someone to handle that with their child? And I'm not saying you have to have all the answers, but just, some perspective, I think.
I actually use this part of my testimony a lot with what I do now.
Yeah.
I'm talking to kids that come from some hard situations, because a lot of children that are dealing with trauma or things they can't control, they grow up way too fast. And so as a mom with my little girl, I try to make death not a bad thing. I get to control how she sees death. I get to control how she sees a graveyard, or how she sees those things. And for her, we talk about God in heaven as this wonderful thing and wonderful place, and that we get to be with the Lord. And eternal life is like very much a part of what the gospel brings. And like we took Sybil, she's 5, and she wanted to go see where my husband's grandparents were buried. And it was this innocent thing. Like it wasn't loss, it wasn't tragedy. It was just, I want to see where they are. And so I think
Acknowledging it. I hear a lot of that.
There's a lot of fear.
Right.
If you can help a child not fear that, properly walk them through what death is, and not fear death, I think, even if that's inside you, trying to prayerfully show them this is what God has provided for us, to not fear death.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing to do when all of us are trying our best to, we go to the doctors, we try to make sure we're healthy, and so
yeah. I'm sure it's just validating too for her to hear, like, hey, I get that, I've been there.
I talk to kids now, and my own child, about just who I was as a kid. I think it's good for them to normalize a lot of feelings and what they're walking through, and the fear that they may have. But also, as a mom, I can give the what not to do, because this is what I went through. I can do the what not to.
Yeah.
I can learn from that.
Yeah.
And try to encourage my child to just not fear the end, and talk about it in a healthy way.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, because it's not the end.
It's not
the end.
That's right.
So,
I think sometimes we forget it's the goal.
Yeah.
As crazy as that sounds, and that does not lessen someone's grief. And
No.
I don't say that callously, but it's my goal, even though at the same time I also fear it,
Yes,
because it's unknown,
I think we fear the suffering that might come with it. That's part of my thing is, even walking, as we get to this, watching my grandmother suffer.
Yeah.
That was really hard.
Yeah.
I think that's where my pushback or comes into play, and is, Lord, please, don't let me go through that. That's something I have prayed.
Yeah.
Honestly, because I saw it as a child, and I did not like seeing that.
Yeah.
So
that's so real and honest, though, and I think we can all relate to different parts of our stories, and I get that. You mentioned kind of maybe a thread of legalism in your notes. I don't know. You used the word self-righteous. I'd love for you to talk about, do you feel like that was an extension of that control? How did that come about in your faith? And how did you learn to recognize the difference between self-righteousness and, righteous obedience?
Yeah. So it was the Lord. I was at a D now with First Monroe. Actually with Mount Vernon. Kevin Krim was my youth pastor at Mount Vernon, and we did a thing with First Monroe, and I was at this Disciple Now, and the Holy Spirit, honestly, I realized how I had no grace for anyone in my life. I feared my mother more than I feared the Lord. Like, I think when you're self-righteous in a way, like, you hide the sin, or you still do it, but you don't want anybody to know about it. And so, or you measure your sin on the people around you. And so that's what I was doing. And that as I don't remember who spoke, but as the pastor was talking, that it hit me in the chest. That's what I was doing. Was I was checking off boxes, thinking that was saving me because these other people weren't doing it, and I gave my life to the Lord, knowing that I was living in a place of thinking my doing was what was saving me, instead of just being with Jesus, like understanding that his doing is what saves me.
Yeah.
What he did.
So that night, is that when you became a Christian that night?
So I walked the aisle when I was 8 at First
Okay.
Wisner.
But that's when you like had that realization.
Yes.
Okay.
At the D. Now, when I was 8, I don't know what I.
Yeah. I
I
get it.
And so I've actually had to pray, like, Lord, I don't have a date. I don't even know when that D-nail was. I'm not good with dates, but I remember my heart. I remember, like, the moments, but I never would attach a date to those moments.
Yeah.
But
so that was a surrender moment for you.
Yeah, it was. And I've actually prayed for the Lord to give me clarity on that. Like, because I dealt with doubt for a long time, even into college, of like, am I even saved? Because I prayed that prayer the prayer so many times when I would wrestle with sin.
Yeah.
Or like things, like struggles would come and I would think, oh, I'm not saved. That's what's wrong with me. And so I would pray the salvation prayer and think, it's my words that save me.
Yeah.
Instead, and then there was this moment with the Lord where I remember clearly him just saying, hey, you're thinking of you too much. That's where this doubt's coming from. You need to trust me and not your words.
Yeah. And
you need to just now take a step of faith and just go with me. And that changed. That was ball game. Like that changed how I pursued the Lord. It was no longer selfish, because I think my doubt was like just keeping me on. I was not loving people well. I didn't actually. It was just about me. Like I was stuck on me, and I think that was.
You think
college.
that was just like driven by self-preservation?
I don't know. I really don't know. It was a lack of discipleship, probably, because I thought if I sinned or if I committed a sin, I'm not saved. And so I didn't know how to repent. Yeah. I didn't
know. Or that it was okay to confess.
Yeah, I didn't know. And so that was an honest moment with the Lord where I was just he's like, you need to stop. And
I heard you say, like, I struggled to give grace to anyone. How did that moment, and I know this was likely a process as it is for everyone, how did that moment change that for you and begin to unravel where you could see that?
I noticed my sisters more. I noticed my mom, my dad, their hurt, their pain, their struggles. My cousin, Julian, was born when I was 13, and there was a shift all at the same time when all of that happened at the knee now, where I felt the Lord pushing me towards him. And my aunt, his mom, was walking through some hard stuff as a single mom. Yeah. And I didn't have a lot of grace there. And so the Lord's like, you need to go be with them. Go spend a lot of your days, a lot of your time with them. I would go on vacation with her and help her take care of him. Yeah. There was just a shift in my how I viewed my family and how I viewed, not so much, I still would struggle, I think, at school with the people I was around, because I was like, I'm. It was. I think the people I love the most, it was like I started showing more grace to, but it's just the people that I didn't have a lot of patience with at school. That's where I was like, the rub was still there of, man.
Oh, I don't know when that changes.
I don't like
It's not mid-30s.
I yeah. That was a struggle. Because I was ready to be done with West Washita. I was ready to go to college. I was, I loved being in I loved high school, but I was ready for the next phase. And going to tech was a game changer. I met my husband there.
I was going to ask how y'all met.
Yeah, it's a wild story. He grew up in Africa, on the mission field with his parents. He grew up in Zambia and went to boarding school in Kenya. I mean, from like 5 to 19, he was in Africa. And he decided to come back here because his family like his grandparents are here. And so he enrolled in tech. And I enrolled in tech because that's all I knew. My dad was like, you can't go to anywhere but tech. So I was like, yes, sir. And so we met on the steps of Howard Auditorium in 2007, the fall of 2007. Didn't really talk to him much after that. I just saw him and didn't really think of him much after that. But that's where I met him. And then in 2010, that he worked summer camp at Cedar Springs, and I worked there as well that summer. And his sister and his sister and I became best friends. We became roommates. That's who I went to Africa with her for a month to see her family.
Yeah.
He's dating someone else during this whole time, and we're just friends. It wasn't until much later when I'm full-time ministry, not paying attention to anyone outside of just like what God has called me to do, that he began pursuing me. And he will say, like, he will say it's the missionary heart in me that he went after. Like, he saw just Cedar Springs where I worked for about 10 years. That was my life. Like, honestly, that's all I did. And so if people wanted to find me, that's where they came. They came out there. And so he was there. He worked. He worked there. And that,
that's a sweet piece of your story to go from, okay, here I felt really convicted that I struggled to see people and put them first. And then your now husband saying, I was attracted to your missionary heart.
Oh, I love people now. Yeah. Like, I love them. And it's so hard. Like, with the kids that I work with and the adults that I get to work with now, it's hard for me not to want to be all in still. But I'm a mom and I'm a wife, and so you have to steward all of that really well and set up some good boundaries for yourself, because I know I am an all-in person. And so that has been a prayer that the Lord would help me steward my time well.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, I want to dive into that because I have that later in my notes, but we'll just do it now. You talked about one of the things that was really important to you was stewarding things the Lord gives you. So has time been a large part of that? And what does that look like for you? That prayer began during COVID, really, after I had my child. I saw that the hours I was putting in at Cedar Springs was not conducive to me being the mother that I wanted to be. Yeah.
And so I began praying that the Lord would help me steward my time, because I felt this pull, and I think it was some mom guilt in there.
Yeah.
And I would dream. I'm like, Drew, I want a job where my kid can I feel like I'm not giving up being a mom to do something else. And so that was really when that posture of stewarding my time for the glory of the Lord hit. Because in my 20s I was single. Like I was not. I didn't get married till I was 29. I was single and
all in.
Like I didn't have anything pulling for my attention and time. Other than just the call. This is what God has called you to, and a lot of it, some of it was unhealthy because I was like, my life was just ministry. And so I began praying that in 2020, and that's when the Lord was telling me to resign. Like he was showing me you need to let go. Like, and he was peeling. Like, it felt like he was peeling my hands away from something that I was just holding on to. And so I asked the Lord to steward my time. I set good boundaries. I'm in a place right now that's very healthy for me being a mom and still serving people in the way I want to serve people. Being a wife. My husband and I, we work at the same place, so we can get lunch together a lot and see each other and check up on each other, and so it's just a beautiful thing to see how you can grip something so tightly, and then the Lord just say, "Trust me," and let me show you how to use your time.
Well, and like, I know you know this, but even for people listening that are like, that's where I'm at, I'm white knuckling it and he's peeling my fingers back. Like, I look at your story and I'm like, you're still living out that calling all in. It just has different facets now, you know? And so like, I think that's a beautiful message for somebody that is like, I can't see past letting this go. I do want you to talk about Cedar Springs because I know that's a big part of your life and your story. And sorry, I made you skip ahead. But tell us about that and just the, I think in your notes, maybe you phrase it like it was life-changing for you. So how did that look?
So I'll start at the beginning of how I just came into Cedar Springs. I prayed for friends. I was just praying for friends.
This was while you were in college? Okay.
Yeah. So I was about to go into my senior year at Tech with a history degree. Didn't know what I was going to do with my life. And
I just now do, so that's
I signed up for history because they said I could go to London. That's literally I wasted 4 years because they said I could go.
Did you get to go?
On my honeymoon, I did.
Oh.
But no, like, literally, I am a go with the flow, just kind of like, but it's weird. Like, I have this, like, I want to plan, but then I'm fine with this.
You had a plan? You were going to London.
I was going to London.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, didn't know what I was going to do with my life. But 2010 hit, summer, I was praying for friends. I was very lonely. Very shallow friendships, like just kind of like sit with you at lunch type friendships, not doing much with each other outside of that. And so I began praying for godly friendships. I wanted to grow in my faith, and so I applied to Cedar Springs. I didn't know anybody that was out there, and then I realized Brandy Bostick, she messaged me, said she was working that summer. She and I did elementary, middle school, high school together, so I knew her. And I came on for staff. Well, I applied, and I remember Terry Slauson asking me, "Where do you see yourself in 10 years?" And I said, "I have no idea." And little did I know I would be sitting on that front porch 10 years from them, working for him. And I got the job, and I had no idea what camp looked like. Didn't understand it. I went as a kid, and I was trained, but that summer, I had never been around godly guys my age. I had not seen that growing up. I had not gone to high school with guys that I knew that loved the Lord like these guys were loving the Lord. And we started doing like Friday night Bible studies. We would do camp all week and still want to be with each other.
Just
and
the
our staff.
Yeah.
And we would go meet at Shinny Baptist Church, and we were walking through the book of Ephesians together. We were singing, praising the Lord on Friday nights after we had worked a week of camp. And I'm looking at these guys like I had never seen a guy like this. Like guys like this love Jesus. And it changed. It really changed the trajectory of what I've been pursuing.
Probably your expectations, like
Yes,
on friendship, marriage.
Yes, everything. Like Drew was there. I mean, Drew grew up on the mission field. His family gave up so much, and I'm watching this guy like he was going to have a quiet time. No matter what we were doing. Like we went to Destin as a staff at the end of the summer, and he would go lock himself in a closet and make sure he was having that quiet time. And I mean, that was I'd not seen that before. And so those people, just peer-to-peer discipleship changed my life. They're some of my best friends. I worked Sagan Ezel. He and his wife, they send me a Christmas card. I haven't seen them in like 3 years. They have a 1-year-old. I can call him and we can talk forever. He is one of my best friends. Michelle, my sister-in-law, she's one of my people. I mean, when I had my second child, she came and stayed with me for a week right after I had him, and I trusted her to see me like in that place of like postpartum and all of that. She was there for me. She was there, and Drew, my husband, he is my greatest friend in the world. But the Lord provided something that I did not see coming in friendship, but then in ministry. I worked, that was my first time to ever work with students from the south side of Monroe. And I did not know that Parkview existed. Did not know that area existed. I lived in West Washita area, and that changed. Like when I realized that place existed, these children existed, that changed. And I started feeling a call. Like there's something to this, Elizabeth, and you need to pay attention, because I was starting to come out of my shell, and I was starting to see my gifting and how God had wired me, and it was coming out at camp with working with students and working with children, and so I then applied to do the after-school camp as just a college student and continue on, and I got that job. And so I worked a full year at Cedar Springs. My whole senior year, I would go to Tech and then come back to Cedar Springs and work till 6 in the afternoon with kids every day. And it was like I could speak kid. It was something I was starting to realize, you're good at this. God had wired me for this. And I left Cedar Springs after I graduated from Tech, and Michelle was going back to Africa to see her parents, Drew's parents. And she asked if I would go with her, and I did, and I went, and I stayed a month in Johannesburg and Cape Town area, and we did a VBS while we were there at a church, and that's when I really heard the call of the Lord saying, Elizabeth, no matter where you are, what kids you work with, this is what you need to do. And because I loved it. It was like, I think it just, I don't know how else to, like, I can still, when the picture pops up on my memories of the kids I worked with that week of camp, I always go, that's the week. That week was a confirmation for me that I'm going back and I'm going to work with students, kids, no matter what. I didn't care. And so I came back, and I did a week at Cedar Springs. They needed a sub. And then I got a job at a daycare because I was going to tell those kids about Jesus. And then I got a job as at a tutoring agency, a tutoring service in Ruston, and I wanted to be around those. It was like no matter what, I wanted to be around students, around children, and I didn't care what the job was. I just said, Lord, just lead me, guide me. And then I went to a wedding of a Braden Garrison now. I went to her wedding, and Kendrick Banks, who was working at Cedar Springs then, he was in line ahead of me, and he said, Elizabeth, there's an opening for our after-school camp director. It's coming. And he continued to talk to me, and that stayed. Like, it stayed with me. It didn't leave me. Yeah. And so I talked to Sagan Ezel about it, and Sagan was still going out to Cedar Springs and volunteering his time a lot. And he mentioned me to Mr. Terry, and I got a call. Terry, Mr. Terry, he called me and said he wanted me to come in and talk. And I came in, and it was during that was a 2012 summer, I believe. I came in, and I talked to Mr. Terry, and I remember seeing Miss Tammy, his wife, on the front porch, and she said, you look like a young lady, a young woman. And I said, thank you. It was just her showing me, because I was about to take a job and be over. Children have to talk to parents. Yeah. It was the leadership role. Right. And I think she was validating, you can do this. Right. You're a young woman. You are You're an
not
adult.
A camper.
You're not a camper.
Yeah.
You're not a summer staffer anymore.
Right. Yeah.
You are about to be a leader. And so I got that job, and I made very little money, but I was so happy. Yeah. So blessed. I was still living in Ruston, driving back and forth to Cedar Springs, and so happy. And then Kendrick left, and not long after that, Mr. Terry sat me down on the front porch, and he said, would you consider being the ministry coordinator? And I was like, what does that mean? I didn't expect that. It was not something I was looking for. I prayed about it, and I came back and I said, yes, but I want to meet with Kendrick. I need to know his rhythms. I want to understand how he did things. And so I remember meeting with Kendrick, and he said, you're going to make it your own. You have to build it. I'm not going to help you. And I was like, okay. Yeah. Let's go. And so I really built it. I started building what camp, I came up with a camp training manual. I pulled tons of stuff from different places and and to build a camp culture for our staff.
Which is how that feels.
Yes, so, I knew how it felt when I was there, and how and I wanted to bring that back for every staff member that came after.
But I love that he instilled this calling in you, and then also took those tendencies that you called controlling, and it's like, okay, but now you're going to direct. Yeah, and we're going to use those together.
I programmed. I remember one of the guys that I worked with, Gary Kaufman. He and I were going and buying stuff for camp, and he said, Elizabeth, do you know the answers to all the questions you ask? And I said, I sometimes do, but I still ask the question, and I want y'all to give me the answers, even though I know how I want to do it. That was something I had to learn. Even in a role of leadership, I wanted them to own it, and them to see that they put in the work, so that they could say, we designed this. But yet in my mind, I knew how I wanted it to be. And I just had to let some of that go, some of that control go. But he did take those strengths that I thought were weaknesses, and help me be a leader, and lead college students, which I never thought I would be doing. I thought I was just going to work with kids, but I was leading college students and showing them how to work with kids. I had a lot less confidence when I first began, because like, okay, I'm Stephen Kiersey's boss, and I was on staff with Stephen.
Yeah.
So we were the same, almost the same age. He was a
Right.
year or two younger than me, and so that was hard. Being so close in age to the people I'm hiring.
Yeah.
And then now I'm 36 and I'm working with 21, 22-year-olds.
Yeah.
And it's become, it was a, I just felt like I had a lot to prove at the beginning. And there was a lot of errors, a lot of like Mr. Terry just letting me build things and I fall, and then him helping, like we walked together and figuring things out. But he really did let me run.
Yeah.
Like, he let me just go.
I'm sure there was so much you learned that way.
I did.
Yeah.
Like, it was, he trusted me. That was a huge, like, this was his baby that the Lord laid in his, in his lap, like, to build. And he was trusting me to build a staff to share the gospel with children, to be intentional with children. And that meant so much that he trusted me for that long. And he would always say, Elizabeth, there's nothing you do or say that would make me want to just say you're done.
Yeah.
And I'd believe that. Like, and so we would have discussions. We would have things that we didn't agree on, but there was always like this genuine love and respect that we had for each other, because he saw me as I was one of the kids that he saw and then became a college student. So he was seeing me grow.
Yeah.
And the Lord, man, it was like he was hiding me there. Like, Seeker Springs, it's everything. We tell people it's where you go to get away from things to find the Lord. I was there all the time.
Yeah.
So it was just, it became my haven.
Very formative years.
Yeah. The years that I learned how to do ministry.
Yeah.
And it was under him. And he was he is, to this day, I'll call him if there's a decision or something that I'm praying about with even my family. I'll ask his advice. I'll ask for advice, and he'll say, "Just pray, Elizabeth. You need to pray." and I'm like, I'm doing that. But
you were going to say that, but had to ask anyways.
Yeah. But the Lord. It's like in Jeremiah, where the very beginning of Jeremiah, he said that you are going to build and you're going to plant. That's what happened in those years.
He thinks he's too young.
Yes, that's how
and
it
the Lord's
felt.
like, I will give your mouth
Literally,
what it needs to say.
Yes, I had that in the back of my Bible.
Yeah.
In those years was Jeremiah, the very beginning of this is where I was.
Yeah.
And what he was doing with me was because the students that I had at the very beginning of at Seeker Springs are now on my staff in Broaden Horizons. So it's been a full circle of I'm seeing the children that began in kindergarten and first grade, and now I'm watching them apply to work in Broaden Horizons at Seeker Springs, and it's really cool.
And who better to encourage and disciple them than the one who has felt the weight of that in their life, of like, you actually let me try this and fail, and you let me make these decisions, and some of it worked out, but I look back, like you see all that and you understand like the impact that was on you, which is so cool. Tell us what Broaden Horizons is and how did you get plugged in with that?
Okay, so Broaden Horizons is an after-school and a summer camp ministry that primarily serves children in Balkanville. Okay. We open it up in the summer to anyone and everyone. It's free after school and summer. we we're not an overnight summer camp. It's a day camp style, and we're Christ-centered. We use college students to mentor, and
that's what you started, right? You started with mentoring.
at Broaden Horizons, okay, I left Cedar Springs in 2020.
Yeah.
I resigned.
Already had your first child.
Yeah,
right?
I already had my first
Yes.
child, and so I left Cedar Springs, and I joined Broaden Horizons as just a mentor.
Yeah.
And so honestly, I will say they should not have hired me, because that's usually a college student's job, but they did. They graciously said yes. We'll let this person come on our staff and work with students. And honestly, I had so much peace just being with students.
Yeah.
I worked with fifth graders every day during the school year.
That's a fun age, because they have some deep questions, but they're not afraid to ask them.
Yes, there was some topical things that I was not expecting.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Probably even younger than that.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was really eye-opening
Yeah.
to see what was going on
For sure.
every day in these kids' lives. And a lot of them come from very hard lives. There's some neglect and abuse and some things that are happening. And so that would walk in the school, and then I would get it in the afternoons. And I remember one day, they were just coming at me with tons of things, and I said, time out. I took them into the multipurpose room. I sat them in a circle, and I genuinely looked at all of them. I said, I don't know how to help you. I'm going to pray. Mm-hmm. And so I said, every one of you close your eyes. I'm going to ask the Lord to help me out loud with you sitting right by me to know how to do this, because y'all have some heavy stuff. And I remember one little girl just start crying as I was praying. I just felt it was so weighty.
Yeah.
And those kids are now freshmen in high school.
Wow.
And
But like, what a beautiful thing that you gave them that day of like, hey, I don't have all the answers, but I know someone who does.
yeah, I wanted them to see
Yeah.
where I go.
Yeah.
And I love those kids. It's kind of similar to that 2010 summer of just stepping back. I wasn't in leadership. I was just serving again and just being with kids.
Yeah.
And that was at Limbo Elementary. Great team. I had a great team that I worked with. Got very close with a lot of those people I worked with. And then that following summer, I became a summer staffer again. I was the oldest summer staffer on the Broaden Horizons summer staff.
Yeah.
And I didn't care.
Yeah.
I really did not care. I just wanted to work with kids, wanted to work with students, share Jesus with them, play basketball with them. And
well, and you don't look a day older than 20, so.
thank you so much. But I never felt off. I did not feel like I wasn't supposed to be there.
Yeah.
And I saw kids come to know the Lord that summer. And I continued on as a mentor. I didn't care. At that point, I was like, I think this is something, I think the Lord is really, I'm going to lean in a little bit more, see what God's doing here. And then Jana Hutzler and Caitlin Weems, Mr. Terry's daughter, came to me. They were the admin of Broaden Horizons. They asked me to come have lunch with them, and they said, would you consider coming on full time and leading the program, discipleship and programming. And I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure because I knew I wanted to, that stewarding thing.
Yeah.
I wanted to pray about that because I really was loving what I was doing, just being a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
But financially, that wasn't sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
For my family, we were just trying to be faithful with every little step. If you want me to be a mentor, I'll be a mentor. We won't make much money, but Lord, you're going to take care of us. And this was another thing that he was being faithful and just saying, I'm laying this in your lap.
Mm-hmm.
Just like the ministry coordinator thing. I'm laying this in your lap. Are you available?
Yeah.
And I said yes. And stepped into that role. And I began, again, interviewing and hiring summer staff and after-school staff and programming, writing Bible studies, and teaching college students how to be intentional with the gospel, and wisdom that I had learned at Seeker Springs doing camp and after school, and all of those different things I saw God bring back again. And it was refreshing, and but also he was faithful in that my hours, I could go home.
Yeah.
I could go home and be with my kids. My kid at that time, there was only one. And my marriage would not suffer.
Yeah.
And that those were things that I had been praying for.
Yeah.
That all of that stewarding, all of the things that I knew the Lord was calling my heart to and giving me desires, he said, this is it. And so I stepped into that role, and he's been faithful.
I love that picture that you painted there, because I hear that often, especially with moms, of like, I feel called to do this, but how am I going to make that work with motherhood or my marriage or whatever? And I just think, like, he never gives you conflicting callings. Now, there might be a day, I have a situation today where I'm going to miss something because I've got to be over here, and there might be days like that. But when we do things God's way, he is not going to cause conflict in places that image him. What images him? Marriage, nurturing of your kids, obedience in your calling. And so I see that in your story. It's so encouraging to me in a season where I'm like, hey, what do you want me to do here? And I just think that's encouraging for people to hear.
I think my husband was a huge advocate of, Elizabeth, do what the Lord is calling you to do, because he had that same heart. He is a minister. He understood and supported and wanted me to flourish in whatever I did. And I remember one time we sat down with each other, and there was this moment of, I looked at him, I said, I'm not getting a quiet time. Like, I feel stretched. I'm not getting time with the Lord like I used to. And he said, well, let's be intentional with that. I'll take the kids during this time so that you can do this. And even in that moment, in that conversation, the Lord was setting us up where we were about to walk through a very hard time with both of us. And so it was like the Lord was already taking care of both of us. Like, we're going to make sure we're both with the Lord intentionally at certain times, so that in this next trial, we know where to turn. We know how to get through it. Yeah. And so the Lord has been so faithful for both of us because we both love the Lord. Like, honestly, just we want each other to love Jesus more than anything else. Yeah. And those are, before, my husband's on a mission trip right now. He won't be back until Tuesday, left last Thursday, and he's on the other side of the earth. But he left me flowers and a letter before he left, and it was just about loving Jesus, that's love Jesus well. And so that has been, the support I needed. Yeah. Because I waited a long time to get married, or to just for someone to come along to get me, to understand that I have a call on my life, and I want to continue doing ministry, but also I want you, let's both come and be partners with each other. And Drew Coker, he he's like, yes. And I said yes, and we've been doing it. And so
I love that.
yeah.
That's so good. So that's what you're doing currently is you're working in, that's so awesome. And loving it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am. We are about to start summer camp. This will be my 6th summer with Broaden Horizons.
Yeah.
We just finished hiring our summer staff.
Yeah.
We ended our after school program last week. We had 8 salvations throughout the year, 7 baptisms. And that's
so
junior
sweet.
high and elementary kids. Like it's wonderful. Like to see students that a lot of them aren't in church. Come to know the Lord and really, really want to follow Him.
Right.
Yeah.
For people listening that are in the area that either know someone that might want to attend or they want to get involved, how can they find y'all?
You can go to broadenhorizons.cc.
Okay.
Or just look for us on Facebook.
Yeah.
We're there. And if they, or go to First West. Like Broaden Horizons is a nonprofit under First West.
Okay.
So there's the thrift store, there's Broaden Horizons,
Yeah.
and then there's the counseling center.
Gotcha.
And so, like, my office is at First West.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll put that in the show notes so people know.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Elizabeth, thank you so much for coming today and sharing. I know we probably did not scratch the surface of all the things you could share about, but it was powerful and super encouraging, so thank you.
Yeah, it was an honor to be asked, to come. Yeah.
Well, Karen Wallace threw you under the bus, so
She did. She's my girl. She's always there for me.
she spoke very highly of you, and we actually didn't think it was going to work out for season 3, but the Lord had other plans, so I'm so glad.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. And thank y'all so much for listening in this week. We will see you next week on the Saltworks.
This is my story. This is your story.